This is Change the Brain, conversations without limitations.
Welcome to Around the Mic with Sir Charles. You'll hear this broadcast either on the podcast, Around the Mic, or on my social media page, Change the Brain, Conversations Without Limitations. You know, it's not just about me, so you'll hear information from different speakers, trainers, coaches, and authors, all for you. So get your pad, your note paper, if possible, so that you can take copious notes on how you can also become better, the best version of you. Hey folks, this is Sir Charles Carey, Peak Performance Strategist, coming at you one more time with another special episode of Change the Brain, Conversations Without Limitations. And in light of the things that the country has been going through and the things that have been going on, I thought it was only appropriate to speak to someone that it's their job or it's their profession, their area of expertise, to speak to diversity and inclusion, amongst other things that he does. So without further ado, I bring to the show none other than my good friend, Terry Spain. Terry, how's it going, man?
Charles, hey, thanks for inviting me. Everything is going well, despite in spite of what's happening in the United States and across the world, for that matter. But we're all trying to keep our head above water and keep pushing through.
Exactly. Now, and I know we did an event in Florida not too long ago, and you know this is nothing new to you. This the platform of communication and speaking and stuff. But how long have you been in or using the diversity and inclusion topic or area of expertise as your area of prominence?
Well, of course, I started off in the Navy. When I was in the Navy, I was a command equal opportunity advisor, and then from there, I moved up and became an equal opportunity advisor, and also and was later changed to a command climate specialist. If you did not know, I was an instructor at the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, which is also known as DEOMI. I was an instructor there for 3 years, and that's where I really learned a lot more in regards to diversity and inclusion and kind of hone my craft, just to have an opportunity to speak to thousands of military and train thousands of military and civilian DOD personnel. And when I was living in Washington, D.C., I was actually in charge of the entire region for diversity and inclusion, which included portions of the White House, Camp David, the Naval Academy. And so there was a lot of bases and a lot of people that I was kind of responsible for as it relates to diversity and inclusion as the regional command climate specialist.
Okay. Well, I got lights popping off and on in here. but listen, you know, it's funny because I took a similar path in being in government and so forth. I was teaching on customer service and communication, and in my own practice, that's exactly what I do now. You know, I speak on the same things that gave me a launching pad, or I got a chance to wet my feet at first, which was that communication area of focus, and now I've added that to my repertoire. So that's a smart move. It goes to show how resilient and how much we can use what we have to take ourselves to the next level in life. Now, yes. Let me ask you this. You know, you see what's going on in the country. You know, we have a dual pandemic or double pandemic, if you will. And of course, it's bad enough that it's suspect that the pandemic is authentic. I believe it's authentic, but I also believe there's more. I believe there's more going on than what they have shared with us, whether it's 5G or whatever the case may be. But this situation with George Floyd and the other people that have most recently been murdered, I mean, do you see any conclusion to all this? Do you see a way of us having a peaceful resolution, if you will?
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the world right now, huh?
Yeah.
I do want to send my respects to the Floyd family and all those who lost their lives to
absolutely
senseless gun violence and police brutality. One of the unique things that I had a friend that invited me. He's also in diversity and inclusion. He was asked to do training with the police department for community and police department training about 2.5 years ago. And that was very effective. And so just having an opportunity to interact and see the community interact with the citizens was remarkable. And I think that's what's needed again. I was telling people, and I told a few people I had a conversation with the other day. When I was growing up as a kid, I knew the police officer. Someone was either my football coach, family members. So I felt comfortable, and I know if I got in trouble or made a mistake, they wouldn't react too fast because they knew who I was. So they'll go tell my dad, or they'll go tell my uncle, or somebody who was close to me, so that they can set me straight. So, and I think that's what's missing. I think there's a unique opportunity for the police department to interact more with the community. And so, if they get the right people, and some of us definitely have a lot of experience with that, to come on board just to get that interaction and get that conversation and get all this information from people who can help the community, I think that would be great. You have some very great people out there that are training. You have some dynamic training, and that's one of the things that I do is I can bring that stuff together. But we have other people that can do that as well.
I'm looking at the fact that not just the fact that the charges were not so immediately brought to the forefront, but I'm just looking at how blatant the act itself was, that they would do what they're doing and, just look the other way, justify it, write it off. I've seen so many things on social media, for example, where our law enforcement, who are paid by our public dollars, are confronting citizens and talking them or entrapping them with dialogue, and then, justifying their wrongdoings. They're wondering why the world is going through all the things that the world is going through. They're wondering why, the country is up in arms. It just is so crazy. And you would think that part of a law enforcement's protocol and part of the training would include dealing with difficult people, people of different cultural backgrounds, people with language barriers, people that may be considered impoverished. And to them, it's just, you deal with one group of people one way, and everybody else gets dealt with another way. So basically, if you're not a person of influence or that is obviously well off, you don't count. Your voice doesn't matter. You won't be heard. And I just find that to be atrocious.
And you know what? You brought up some good points, but I think I would be very interested to see the protocol and the procedures and the training that is given to police officers, either whether it's doing the police academy or is it's on a continuous basis. I would be very interested to see that and be willing to help to assist in that. And when it comes to human relation and cultural competency and actually get an opportunity to understand people that may not look like you.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest issues is a lot of people's socialization. If you bring a cop in that's from let's just say a town, let's just say Maine, right?
Right.
And you want him to police in the city of Compton, California. That's a different dynamic. So there should be training and cultural competency training to understand that, because it would be even difficult for someone like me if I was a cop as an African American that's from South Carolina. Okay. And you want me to go to New York City to be a cop. I need to know how New Yorkers think, because one thing that I did realize and I understand is when I had an opportunity to go to New York a few times, I know a lot of New Yorkers are very aggressive, and just from my experience, and so someone who's from the South who's pretty laid back, they could take offense to that. Sure. And so I think wherever you get assigned to as a police officer, there should be some training, whether it's with how the community is or cultural competency is, so that it can help you out. And not only you, it can definitely help the police force.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I'm anxious to see what type of training is given for cultural competency, because that's something that needs to be addressed.
Now, for you yourself,
that could have been addressed before all this happened anyway, but it would be more so than now.
Totally agreed. So for you yourself in your own experience being in the Navy, did you ever experience any, not the part of death or murder, but do you ever receive or experience or witness any blatant racism and things of that nature? I mean, and if you did, how did you handle it?
Well, you could kind of see some people who were racist, you know, in the military. But one of the unique things about the military is we all are for one goal. We're there for the one mission, and we have to put aside our differences oftentimes.
Right.
So, and if it was an opportunity or an occasion where someone was blatantly blatantly being discriminated on, that would be addressed with somebody like the job that I had as an equal opportunity advisor. We would come in, and when we give continuous training in the military, it's required training that you have to have in the Navy. I can speak for, and so I think I have experienced it. I've even experienced it in the military, in the community that I was living in,
Wow.
just by the car that I was driving. You know, so it's you know it's everywhere. I had an experience where
Well, what do you mean by because of the car you was driving? What kind of car were you driving?
I had a Lexus ES300,
Okay.
and a Caucasian gentleman came up to me, and he said, "Hey, how did you afford to pay for that?" Now, for me, you know, I'm thinking like, why can't I pay for that? You know what I mean? But it took me
Sure,
by,
sure.
you know, it took me. I was taken aback a little bit, you know,
Right, right.
but because he was shocked and surprised that I was able to buy a Lexus. You know what I mean? I've seen where I would have my uniform on and people would thank me for my service. Right? I can go back into that same store with the same people and no one would say anything. Now I know people see the uniform, so they gravitate to saying thank you for your service. But what is your reason for not being kind to me or speaking to me when I'm out of uniform? You know, so I had to look. Those are some of the things that I think about sometimes. I don't want to, you know, go off to the left too much. But
No, that's
it
okay.
kind of baffles me sometimes when I have an opportunity to think and see things for what it is.
Now, for you personally, let me just ask you, how have the occurrences of the past week affected you either personally or professionally?
Well, are you saying just in regards to the shooting and the and everything that
Yeah,
was not the shooting, the murder?
rioting and
Well,
protest.
you know what? It was almost like history was repeating itself again. So in the '60s and the '70s, even though I wasn't around, I do a lot of research, and history is one of my favorite subjects. And
Okay.
so I was happy to see um, people from all walks of life come together to protest. But what really hurt me was when I seen people that wasn't doing it peacefully, where they would go and loot and
Yeah,
riot, do all these things in the street. That wasn't necessary.
exactly.
I look at Martin Luther King and how he led a peaceful protest, and it was effective. Because why are we here today? Because if it wasn't for his peaceful protest, no telling where we would be. So I was very happy to see communities from all over. And one of the things that, you know what, that really hit home to me,
What's that?
um, we were in we in Syria. I saw a young man paint a mural of George Floyd in a war-torn country like Syria. He painted a perfect mural of him during this time.
Wow.
And so you can tell that this has hit all around the world. You
Yeah,
seen the people in London who were marching and protesting. You seen people that was in Japan and other places, and that was very exciting to see. So if we could come together for something of that magnitude, we should be able to come together and live in peace.
and you know what it shows me? It shows me is that people are affected by this occurrence, this murder, call it what it is, worldwide. So that also says that people in other countries, other states, of course, but other states, other countries around the world are being impacted by police the same way.
I agree.
because there's no way that people that don't have to be involved in a protest, that don't have to stand up to voice their opinions, why would they do that? There must be something that they have seen, not just this occurrence, but there must be something that they've seen, experienced, or a way that they've been impacted that has that caused it to cross all barriers and all borders. You know?
Yeah, yeah. People are tired, and I hear it a lot. I hear from friends or family members who would say, I'm just tired of the senseless violence, whether it's through police or whether it's through just citizen on citizen.
And I'm curious, I'm curious, Terry, I'm curious to know, this is a generalization, but I'm curious to know, out of all law enforcement, whether it's state police, park police, city police, county police, sheriffs, detectives, whatever, I'm really curious, what percentage of police across the board, all boards, what percentage subscribe to this type of treatment and behavior? Because those same people, I would attest that they are some of the same people that may have their hands dirty in other areas too. I really wonder what that percentage is. Is it 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 10%? Whatever the percentage is, I really would like to know, because I've heard about police reform, and I'm hearing that, maybe just changing the way that, it's more than just training, changing the way that they learn to view people. And what you alluded to earlier, work in a jurisdiction that you live in. These things to me can make a huge difference. And if you are racist, then you don't need the job. And if you are a person that's fearful of people or not comfortable with people, then you don't need the job. If you cannot meet all of the requirements, self-defense, weaponry, communication skills, you're not the right person for the job. And there's no shame in that. Just find something else.
Yeah, I think you were spot on with that. And the crazy thing about it is, the requirements for being a police officer, they don't get paid as much. And but I seen where you pass the police academy, and I think it's a series of things you have to do. But I think a step that needs to be taken is a cultural competency step as it relates to you being a police officer.
I like that.
We shouldn't be rushing folks in because we need them, because we should be worried about quantity over quality any day.
I mean, quality over quantity. Yeah.
Quantity. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that needs to be looked at. Do a background check. Obviously, that's one of the things that they do before you become a police officer. But have that training and that awareness before you even put that uniform on.
What else does cultural competence consist of? Can you share some of those things?
Well, you hear people that have stereotypes. So with cultural competency, you can kind of break that stereotype, misconception or what have you of different races, and you'll actually become a better person once you understand how people act.
Yeah.
Certain cultures, like, and I said this for an example. When I was just living in Japan, I was taught as a kid to look a person in the eyes when you're talking to them. Well, a lot of Asian cultures, they don't look each other in the eyes. Sometimes they have their head down.
Right.
So if you had a class in cultural competency, you would have known that. But if you don't, then all of a sudden you probably be thinking this person's a threat or they're hiding something,
right,
because of what you've been taught. So if you're able to understand different cultures, that would help a lot of people out, and you won't have to be so reactive, and you can be kind of proactive as it relates to pulling somebody over that needs to, do a crime or have done anything wrong or not even done anything wrong. If you have that cultural competency experience, that would definitely help you out, because you would think in the back of your mind, oh, okay, I remember Asians don't like to, some Asians, not all, but
For more information on these topics or presenters, go to our Facebook page.
You're watching Change the Brain, Conversations Without Limitations.
Some ages, not all, but don't look each other in the eye when they're talking to them. So you would know that, and you won't take offense.
That's a good point, because I had a good friend of mine who deals with the mental health community. He was talking about the fact that if someone raised their voice, for a lot of people, you're attacking them, and you may be simply making a point of reference, not just a point of reference, but trying to create a certain, I guess, emphasis of sorts. And for some people in the inner city or in the community, may think that you're attacking them. And again, those are cultural, habits or behaviors that need to be understood. So I get what you're saying, and that's an excellent point. Thanks for sharing that. So, I've noticed that the athletes are the ones that are really speaking the loudest. The athletes and the actors, and there was a phrase, I'm trying to remember, a phrase that Maya Angelou said something about: part of an actor or an artist's job is to reflect the times, something on that level. So
Okay.
to see these different artists and musicians and
Entertainers.
actors, they're standing up saying, I stand for George Floyd, or I stand for equality, I'm against injustice, all this sort of thing, this language. I applaud them because they do have a platform, they do have influence, and
Right.
people will listen to them. The only bad thing for, I shouldn't say it's a bad thing, the only jeopardizing thing is that some of these people they may lose an audience. But for the sake of what's right, I applaud them tremendously, because they are taking the high road and they're looking at the big picture, because it's about humanity and not necessarily their own benefit, their own self-worth. So that's really huge.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised by entertainers and athletes and all these social figures, public figures, taking a stand, because it's nothing new. You look at Muhammad Ali and what he stood for, and a lot of these other entertainers and athletes have done.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with people who are donating. In particular, Michael Jordan pledged $100 million over a 10-year time. That's
Okay.
that's significance in civil rights and civil and justice for equality.
I
You know,
think
so
Magic did too. I think, right? Did he earlier?
I don't know if Magic did 100 million, but I wouldn't be surprised if he donated.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I'm just any of them. I'm proud, and
yeah,
especially for the African Americans, because it goes to show that although you may have come from this community and moved beyond to the upper echelon, you have not forgotten. And if you've never done anything and you're doing it now, I still applaud you, because it's never too late to be a part of the solution versus being a part of the problem.
right. It's an unfortunate incident what happened, but it's kind of like a blessing in disguise, because now you see people starting to come together, and you see how people are willing to understand someone else's culture. They can kind of, empathize with some of the things that either African Americans or Latino or whoever has been experiencing. I've had friends who reached out to me that was not of the African American descent, and we had dialogue, which was great. But we have dialogue on a regular basis as well, but even more so now. But it's just good to see that people can actually come together, which is what it was all designed to be anyway. You
Yeah.
know, can come together and just sit down and talk, because that's the biggest thing. If we can understand and talk and figure out what triggers you, what is the reason and why you do this versus that,
Right.
I think that would make us a whole lot better, instead of just being greedy and not being. I mean, some people are taught to be racist, and that's tough. In
Yeah.
their socialization process, that's all they know is to be racist.
Yeah.
And you do have a choice once you become older, but when something is so ingrained in you, it's hard for people to change after that's all you've known for years. But I've seen it happen. But this is a time where I think we all just be purged. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and just sit back and just reflect on yourself first, because you have to definitely work on yourself before you can go out there and be an advocate for anything. You have to definitely work on yourself. But this is an ideal time for us to all come together.
Well, I think, the next 20 to 30 years will start to show the beginning of a transition, if you will, because I already know there are a lot of things that have been put in place to hold back the quote unquote disenfranchised people. And that's regardless of people of color, people that are not of color. That a lot of those that fall in a certain status or bucket or barrier, well, category, that's probably a better word,
Okay.
fall in a certain category that are and have been affected by laws and legislation that has been changed. Whether it's a certain law being broken, it may be considered not a misdemeanor, but a felony. If you don't have a certain credit score, you can't move in a certain neighborhood, or you can't get a certain job. You see,
Yeah.
things like that have to be changed or relaxed so that people can take advantage of opportunities, so that people can raise up and see themselves in a different and in a better light. Now, at the same time, there's probably over a dozen laws and rules and things that are in place intentionally to keep people from progressing. Now that I'm sure of. But here is the thing, Terry. Until those things are relaxed, people will still be at odds. People will still find themselves behind the 8 ball. So even in the worst of times, I believe your own behavior is a reflection of someone wanting to open the door for you as well. So what I'm alluding to is that people are going to have to also take responsibility for their own actions. Now, I'm not talking about the looters, but if it alludes to looting, yes, then I'm talking about the looters. I'm talking about the fact that if you don't have, that's not a reason to steal. If you don't have, that's not a reason to kill. You know, look, a man may steal to feed his family. I do get that. I know there are many men and people that have sold drugs or robbed so they had food to take care of their families. I get that. But I'm not talking about organized crime. I'm talking about people really wanting to do better for themselves and wanting to have more so they can be more and do more and see more.
And that's one of the things with this pandemic. We had a lot of people who have lost their jobs, and sometimes it's going to take you to do different things in order for you to feed your family. Um, and one of the unique things are there are different training opportunities for people to get. And a lot of schools and a lot of places are offering free training. In particular, they have a Harvard X training, and I'm in a class now that was absolutely free. But
Really?
I wanted to better myself, and just to say, okay, let me hone my skills, just in case I needed to go out and get another job or get a job or something. At least I have this on my resume. And the same with like what they're doing an amazing job with veterans as well.
What kind of classes are they offering, or what type of topics are being offered?
Oh, you name it. In project management, you have speaking, public speaking. There's a list of classes that they're offering, but there's a lot of places that are offering it. And this is if the pandemic did anything, and I'm talking about COVID at this time, it helped me hone my craft, because I've never did this many Zoom calls in my life, you know. But it's fine. It made me become a better person, because this changed. And we talk about diversity and inclusion. This is forever changing how we operate as the United States, in particular in the workforce. A lot of folks feel more comfortable
See,
working from home.
a lot of things that we were just talking about, laws having to be relaxed or changed. I remember there was a time when the classes that you're talking about, that was a common occurrence. But because they took away programs, they've redirected funds for other things. Our government probably needs reform, to be totally honest with you. Because again, there were programs for kids, programs for adults, programs for I don't know if they still call it welfare recipients. There were all sorts of programs for people that were trying to better themselves. And you can very, very rarely find any program without a price point attached. And you have to ask yourself, well, if these people are already behind the eight ball and they don't have money, how are they going to get the funds to take a skill and learn it so that they can go and apply themselves so that they can get better? It's going to be almost impossible. So, you
Yeah.
know, this whole reform, I hate to say it, but maybe it's not just the law enforcement community. Maybe it's the governing bodies of the United States of America that needs to really consider how they treat their own citizens.
Yeah, and I think to be honest with you, I think that is being exposed.
Good.
You know, as it relates to how everyone operates.
Do you remember aftercare? They used to have aftercare. They used to have center where you could play basketball. They had leagues for basketball.
Oh
football.
yeah, they had, yeah, you name it. They had everything. But you know what? That made me the person that I am today, having all those different things, and you can actually learn a trade like in school. And they took those out slowly but surely, but now they're coming back because they realize that a lot of Americans need to learn a trade. Where you got, you know, carpentry, you got auto mechanic,
right?
You got all these different trades that were lacking because they were farming out these jobs to other countries. And and I think that's one of the things that they are bringing back in a lot of schools is that. But because I can remember being in shop class and making some woodwork and stuff, but I was happy with that. You know what I mean? So
sure do.
I'm very glad to see that a lot of schools are bringing those type of courses back.
So what would it take for us to really have strength and unity here in the United States based on, you know, what you teach on diversity and inclusion? What are the things we need to do, or how do we need to see one another, or what type of infrastructure needs to be reinstilled for us to really develop that strength and to come together? I know it won't be 100%, but it needs to be much better than what it is today.
Well, to be honest with you, it already happened. And most of the time when people are united, when people come together, it's during a crisis. When we had September 11th and that unfortunate event that happened, Americans were united. Now we have two pandemics that are happening at the same time. So now when you have the opportunity to see people from all different walks of life coming together to march, and willing and to understand and recognizing that sometimes they are the problem, and recognize that sometimes, hey, this isn't right. Now I see where you're coming from. That's where it starts. So when you ask me, what can you do? Dialogue is the key. And one of the things that you can do to understand, because if you can understand a person, and then you work with it, I like to use this thing called the API method, where you assess the problem. So we've already assessed the problem. And you plan. So when you're doing your planning, you plan and you do all the things to make this effective. Then you implement it. And then once that's done, you evaluate it and see what worked and what didn't work. And then you start the cycle all over again. And that's how we become more effective as the United States is you assess the problem and you plan it, you implement, and then you evaluate and you go from there. But you have to include people. And that's why diversity and inclusion go hand in hand.
I believe you, and I accept that, and I receive that. My issue is this: just like with 9/11, it was short-lived. The unity was short-lived. Like when you listen to, example, many of these corporations talking about, we stand with the African American community. Are you saying it because there's a problem, or are you saying it because you mean it? And do you plan on doing something about it? See, that's my issue. Long-term sustainability is what I'm looking at.
And that's when you have to hold people's feet to the fire. Like, so the iron has struck and it's hot right now. Okay. So everybody wants to jump on board and say, oh, yeah, we stand, I want to play this $10 million. But when those $10 million run out, because $10 million can go real fast if you're spreading this money out.
Right.
What happens then? So so you have to ask those questions and don't say, well, we're just going to do it for 3 months and see what happens. No, this is a continuous basis. Everybody has shown you and told you the problem. Now, what are you going to do about it? Because if you're gonna be in this movement, it's gonna require sacrifice.
Okay.
And so if you're not willing to do that sacrifice, then that's a problem. Because I don't know if you ever heard of this. It's called the social dominance theory, and
Not sure.
it was done by these two psychologists named Sedanis and Prado, and they talked about how the people on top would do any and everything they can to remain on top. So
Yeah.
in order to keep the people on the lower that are beneath them, they would constantly they'll give you a little stuff here, and then they'll shut you down and bring their stock back up. So I
Right.
was doing research because I teach a class called Power and Privilege, and I came across Sedanis and Prado and how they came and they came up with this concept of social dominance theory, and that made a lot of sense to me. So now this is the time when you have everyone's attention. Hold people's feet to the fire.
Right.
Where these athletes who are being vocal now, they need to be vocal 10 years from now, 10 years to 20 years.
Okay.
Entertainers, same thing. And you don't let up.
Yeah.
I think we've let up on a few things and became real lax. And so people got complacent, and this is the time to start and keep going from here on out.
Gotcha. Hey man, have you written on any of these topics or the things that you speak on?
So that's in the works as far as so I have a book that I wrote called Just Lead. And in
Oh,
the book that I wrote, it has some things about being a leader in your community, and it just being a better person and more well-rounded. And I ask challenging questions in the book to kind of get you to think, because if we're going to be united in this United States, we are going to have to work together. I
yeah.
mean, that, to be honest with you, there's no way of getting around it. We, the people of the United States,
Yes,
have to
sir.
work together.
So when will the book be available? Or is it already out?
Yeah, the book is available now, and you can get it on my website, which is terryspainconsulting.com, or
Okay.
you can get the ebook on Amazon. But the paperback book will be on Amazon hopefully this week or next week. Because of the COVID-19, a lot of things have slowed down, but hopefully the paperback book will be available then. But you can get a signed book if you order it through my website.
Now when did it come out?
It came out last week. Well,
Oh,
actually,
really?
about a week and a half ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations. All right. That's all
Appreciate it.
right. So you
Trying to
heard
be
it.
in your status, man. You're a prolific author yourself, so I just
Look, man, us speakers, we have to not only do the actual work, but we have to also let people take us home with us, and they can't always actually take us home. So they can take our resources with them when they leave our events and get
yes.
more of what we have to offer. But folks, you've heard it here first. Just Lead by Terry Spain. Get your copy now. So, man, as we've been discussing everything as it relates to the George Floyd incident, and for those who are watching this, please feel free to make your comments, ask your questions, share it out, if you will. And please understand there's no disrespect to the other African Americans who have lost their lives. It's just that the George Floyd incident seems to have really was the straw to break the camel's back. So that's why he's referenced more. And I don't want to ever attempt to announce or speak to someone's name and mispronounce that name inaccurately, because I don't want to say the name's wrong. So what's next for Terry Spain?
Oh well, that's the $1 million question, huh? Well, I still so I do I continue to do a life skills class at the Brevard County Juvenile Detention Center, where I go and teach a lot of the young men and women life skills. So I continue to do that every Thursday. I try to make it my place of business for that time on Thursdays. But I plan on doing a lot of speaking engagements. I want to go out and help the police officers and give them some tools that they can put in their toolbox. I
Yeah.
also plan to work in the entertainment sector as it relates to sports as well, and with diversity and inclusion, an opportunity to speak to some people who are in sports now and getting some diversity and inclusion materials to them, and working closely with them and promoting the book and just continue to help out others. That's my plan. Those are what's next for me, and do things like this with podcasts and Zoom calls, just so that we can stay sharp
Right.
and help each other out.
Yeah.
That's the goal for me.
And keep that message relevant. Absolutely.
Yes.
And, be sure that when the book comes out, or I'm sure it's already out, but you post it on Affordable Advertising and on the Wordplay Wednesday page so that people can be aware of your book and where to get your book. So if there's one thing you can leave us with as far as I know we spoke kind of very general, but if you can leave us with something for the everyday person and something for the professional or the business-oriented person as it relates to diversity inclusion, share for the everyday person first your message, your exiting message, and then share for the business person your exiting message next.
Okay. Those are two great questions, by the way.
Yeah.
So I like to leave with a quote for the everyday person. I use this quote a lot, but it means so much in particular with this the time that we're in. And it says, very few burdens are heavy if everyone lifts. And so what that means by that is, if I have so many burdens that's going on in my life, I can actually get help when people wanted to that has been in a similar situation or what have you. Or if I'm lifting up a desk, right, and I'm trying to lift up a desk by myself, it's gonna probably be nearly impossible for me to lift up this heavy desk. But if I have 15 other people around me that can help me lift up that desk, it'll be a lot easier. So very few burdens are heavy if everyone lifts. And for the business standpoint, I tell business leaders now, diversity and inclusion is definitely it's going to be your best bet, because it helps your business grow, for one, and for two, you will earn that respect from your employers. There's a lot of people who are never had experienced this. We have never experienced something to this magnitude ever.
Right.
So being kind, being thoughtful, being empathetic to a lot of people problems and issues that they have will definitely help your company, help you out in the long run as you in your strive for becoming a better leader.
So people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, huh?
Exactly.
My man.
I like that.
Who do you know the author of that first quote?
That was an Amish quote. So
okay.
So yeah.
That's good enough.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I just want to thank you for taking time out your busy schedule to sit with us and to talk to us. We broadcast this program on the Change the Brain Conversations Without Limitations Facebook page on Thursdays at 7 p.m. And it'll probably be on the podcast at some point sooner or later. So once again, Terry Spain, thank you for your time. We look forward to seeing you next time. And as I always say, you got to radiate the brain and change the game.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody knows you and I